The floor beneath a heavy footfall feels absolute. It is the bedrock of a world that has endured for billions of years, a theatre where the laws of nature act as silent, invisible directors. We wake to the same sun, governed by the same constants that dictated the birth of the first stars. This is the great deception of the cosmos, the appearance of a finished work. We inhabit a room of perfect silence, where the walls are crafted from the clearest glass. Outside this sanctuary, a tempest of primordial chaos rages, a storm of energy and potential that predates time itself. But within these walls, everything is held in a state of exquisite frozen equilibrium. The air we breathe is a precise mixture. The light that strikes our eyes moves at a constant and predictable velocity, and the very atoms that compose our flesh remain bound together by forces that seem as old and as unbreakable as the foundations of the earth. In this quiet chamber, humanity has built civilizations and catalogued the heavens, convinced that the stillness is the primary law of existence. We measure the distance between galaxies and the weight of subatomic particles, treating the universe as a fixed stage upon which the drama of life unfolds. We have mistaken a temporary pause for an eternal truth. This stability is not a permanent feature of reality. It is a fragile state of grace, a momentary reprieve in a much larger and more violent conversation between energy and nothingness. The glass that protects us is not infinite in its strength. It is under immense pressure from the outside, held in place by a delicate balance of fields that permeate every inch of the void. We are living inside a bubble of false security, unaware that the very vacuum of space, the empty stage upon which all matter dances, might not be the true floor of existence. The danger does not announce itself with the roar of thunder or the flash of a distant star's death. It does not wait for the permission of our mathematics or the consensus of our scientists. Instead, it begins with a subtle, microscopic deviation, a flicker in the fabric of the possible, a single point in the vastness of space, perhaps millions of light years away in the cold dark between galaxies, or perhaps within the very marrow of your bones, undergoes a change in its fundamental nature. The glass of our sanctuary does not shatter with a scream. It simply ceases to hold. In an heartbeat, the parameters of the room shift. The oxygen that once fueled the fires of life and filled the lungs with effortless grace suddenly gains the weight of lead, dragging the chest down into a crushing metallic depth. The light that once illuminated the world, carrying the images of loved ones and the glow of distant suns, turns into a thick, impenetrable shadow. This is not a darkness caused by the absence of light, but a fundamental change in the medium of reality itself, where the photon no longer finds a path to travel. This is the hidden reality of the quantum realm, a place where the word impossible carries no weight, and where the solid ground of our experience is revealed to be a shimmering mirage. Behind the curtain of our daily lives, particles dance in a state of frantic uncertainty, tunneling through barriers and existing in multiple states at once. We perceive the world as solid and reliable only because we exist on a scale where these fluctuations average out into a deceptive calm. But the underlying volatility remains, a subterranean ocean of energy that has not yet found its lowest level. Our universe is not a house built on rock. It is a pocket of steam trapped within a boiling sea, a temporary pocket of order that exists only because the energy levels of the vacuum have been caught on a shallow ledge. We are observers in a laboratory that is itself a part of the experiment, unaware that the floor beneath us is a trapdoor waiting for the slightest vibration to give way. The laws of physics, which we have spent centuries refining into elegant equations, are merely the local rules of this glass room. They are the temporary bylaws of a state of matter that is not the most stable version of itself. If that state were to change, if the vacuum were to find a way to drop just one step further down the ladder of energy, the rules would be rewritten in an instant. The strong nuclear force that holds the centers of atoms together would falter. The electromagnetic force that allows chemistry to function would dissolve. In such a transition, the very concept of a human being, or a planet, or a star, becomes a physical impossibility. The stillness we enjoy is a stay of execution. We look out through the glass at the stars and see a universe that appears to be aging slowly, gracefully, over trillions of years. We see the expansion of space and the cooling of the cosmic microwave background as signs of a predictable and orderly progression. But this order is a thin veneer. Beneath it, the vacuum is a pressurized spring, coiled and waiting. The transition from our current state to a lower one would be a wave of absolute erasure, a frontier of new physics that moves at the speed of light, leaving nothing behind to remember what once was. There would be no wreckage, no ruins, and no ghosts. The light would not just go out, the very capacity for the universe to hold light would vanish. We exist in the interval between the beginning of the experiment and its inevitable conclusion. Every breath taken, every mountain scaled, and every symphony composed is a testament to the endurance of this fragile equilibrium. We are the inhabitants of a glass house that has survived for 13.8 billion years, a duration so vast that it tricks us into believing in permanence. Yet the storm outside has not abated. The quantum fluctuations that define the subatomic world continue their tireless work, probing the barriers of our reality for a single point of weakness. We are the children of a false vacuum, living out our lives in the brief, beautiful moment before the glass finally yields and the universe discovers its true final form. In this story, there is no protagonist who can stop the change, for the protagonist is made of the very laws that are about to be unmade. We are not just standing on the ledge, we are the ledge itself, and the fall is the only thing that remains certain in a cosmos of shifting shadows. The late 1970s marked a period of profound intellectual vertigo. For generations, the vacuum of space had been treated as the ultimate zero, a state of absolute nothingness that served as the silent backdrop for the theatre of matter. In the classical view, once you removed every atom, every photon, and every stray wave of radiation, you were left with the floor of reality, a state of minimum energy from which there was no further to fall. But as the decade drew to a close, a pair of physicists began to peer into the mathematical abyss with a new and terrifying clarity. Sidney Coleman and Frank DeLucia did not find a solid floor. Instead, they found a ledge. Their work, culminating in the landmark papers published in 1977 and 1980, acted as a map to a hidden trapdoor in the very basement of the cosmos. They proposed that our entire universe might be trapped in a state of false stability. To understand their discovery is to recognize that energy levels in the universe function like a landscape of hills and valleys. We have long believed we are resting in the lowest possible valley, the true ground state where physics is at its most relaxed. Coleman and DeLucia showed that we might instead be resting in a shallow dip high up on a mountain slope. This state, which they termed the false vacuum, feels stable because there is a small ridge preventing us from rolling further down. But beneath that ridge lies the true vacuum, a much deeper valley of even lower energy. This revelation transformed the vacuum from a passive void into a latent threat. The fate of the false vacuum was not just a title, it was a prophecy written in the language of quantum field theory. The mathematics suggested that if the universe is indeed in a false state, it is not merely sitting still, it is waiting, it is metastable. Like a mountain of snow poised on the brink of an avalanche, the false vacuum possesses a hidden potential for catastrophic change. Coleman and DeLucia described the mechanism of this change with a chilling precision that stripped away the comfort of the old eternal cosmos. They spoke of the nucleation of a bubble, a tiny, localized point where the ridge is breached and the universe finally drops into the deeper valley. The transition from the classical understanding of a stable void to this modern vision was a departure from the sanctuary of certainty. In the older world, the laws of physics were seen as eternal constants, woven into the fabric of space like unchangeable threads. After Coleman and DeLucia, those constants were revealed to be contingent upon the specific energy level of the vacuum. If the vacuum decays, the threads are pulled out and the entire tapestry is unmade. The vacuum was no longer a stage, it was a substance, capable of phase transitions just like water turning into ice or steam. But while a change in the state of water might freeze a lake, A change in the state of the vacuum would reconfigure the fundamental forces of nature. This intellectual awakening forced the scientific community to confront the possibility of a cosmic expiration date that had nothing to do with the slow cooling of stars or the eventual expansion of space. This was a threat that could originate from the very geometry of the void itself. The papers of 1977 and 1980 were like a cold wind blowing through the halls of physics, carrying the realization that the basement of our reality was not made of stone, but of a thin, vibrating membrane of energy. We were living in a temporary pocket of history, a bubble of false vacuum that had persisted for billions of years only by the grace of quantum probability. As Coleman delved deeper into the implications, he described the result of such a decay as the ultimate ecological catastrophe. Within the bubble of the new, true vacuum, the laws of physics would be so utterly different that life as we know it would be an impossibility. Chemistry would cease to exist. The very protons that make up the hearts of atoms might become unstable. This was not a slow death. It was an erasure of the conditions required for existence. The work of Coleman and DeLucia did not just provide a new theory. It provided a new perspective on our place in the timeline of the universe. We were no longer the masters of a permanent estate. We were squatters in a house that the universe had not yet finished reclaiming. The mathematical sorcery required to uncover these truths was dense and demanding, yet the conclusion was stark and simple. The stillness of the night sky was a mask. The vacuum was not empty. It was filled with a tension that our senses were never designed to perceive. The intellectual journey of the late 20th century led humanity to the edge of a conceptual cliff, looking down into a deeper dark than any previous generation had dared to imagine. By the time the 1980s were in full swing, the fate of the false vacuum had become a permanent fixture of the cosmological landscape, a reminder that the foundation of our world is as much a part of the dynamic, changing universe as the stars that burn within it. The stage was set for the discovery of the specific mechanism that held us on this ledge, a field of energy that would eventually be named for a man who saw the invisible weight of the world. The vacuum is not a hollow void, but a saturated medium, a silent ocean that permeates every coordinate of the visible and invisible sky. This is the Higgs field, an omnipresent texture that serves as the fundamental substrate of our reality. It does not simply exist within space, it is a property of space itself, as inescapable as the dimensions of height and depth. Even in the profoundest reaches of the intergalactic dark, where the nearest star is 1,000,000 light-years distant and the density of matter falls to a single atom per cubic meter, the Higgs field remains. It is the silent sentinel of the cosmos, a background energy that never sleeps and never wavers, providing the invisible scaffolding upon which the entire material world is constructed. Before this field assumed its current state, the universe was a place of frantic, weightless ghosts. In the searing heat of the earliest moments following the dawn of time, particles such as electrons and the quarks that reside within the hearts of protons possessed no mass. They were ethereal, unbound by the concept of weight or inertia, and they screamed through the expanding void at the absolute limit of the speed of light. In such a universe, structure was impossible. No two particles could linger long enough to form a bond. No atom could coalesce. No star could ignite. The cosmos was a formless radiation, a chaotic spray of energy that refused to settle into the permanence of matter. Then, as the temperature of the expanding universe dropped below a critical threshold, a profound transformation occurred. A symmetry was broken. The Higgs field, which had previously existed in a state of high-energy neutrality, suddenly shifted into its current configuration. It did not disappear, it condensed, filling the vacuum with a non-zero value that changed the rules of existence forever. As the weightless particles of the early universe attempted to move through this newly thickened vacuum, they encountered a subtle, persistent resistance. This interaction is the origin of mass. It is as if the universe was suddenly filled with a cosmic fluid, a spiritual molasses that clings to everything that moves through it. The degree to which a particle interacts with this field determines its substance. An electron wading through this invisible ocean feels a modest drag, granting it the mass necessary to be captured by the electric pull of a nucleus. Quarks, the building blocks of the heavy centre of the atom, feel a much stronger interaction, anchoring them into the solid reality of matter. Without this constant, unyielding pressure from the Higgs field, the very concept of solid would vanish. The electrons would instantly break free from their orbits, shedding their weight and fleeing into the dark at the speed of light. The atoms that compose the human heart, the silicon in the crust of the Earth, and the hydrogen fueling the core of the Sun would dissolve into a ghost-like mist of radiation. The Higgs field is the literal glue of reality, the invisible anchor that prevents the material world from evaporating into a flash of light. It is the reason gravity has something to pull against, the reason the Earth has the density to support our weight, and the reason the stars have the pressure required to forge heavy elements in their fiery bellies. Every action we take, from the lifting of a hand to the blinking of an eye, is an interaction with this field. We are constantly pushing against this invisible texture, moving through a medium that we cannot see, hear, or feel, but which provides the very possibility of our being. Yet, this foundational field is not a static monolith. It is a dynamic state of energy, and its current value, the specific thickness of the cosmic fluid, is what defines the laws of physics as we understand them. This value is the ledge upon which the universe rests. The stability of our world depends entirely on the Higgs field remaining at this precise level of energy. If the field were to fluctuate, if it were to find a way to settle into a deeper, lower energy state, the thickness of the vacuum would change. The resistance felt by particles would be altered, and the mass of every object in the existence would be rewritten in an instant. This is the terrifying realization that lies at the heart of modern cosmology. The very field that grants us mass and allows for the existence of atoms is the same field that holds the potential for our total erasure. We are tied to the Higgs field by every fibre of our physical bodies, and we are therefore vulnerable to its whims. If the field is metastable, as the mathematics suggests, then the glue that holds the universe together is not a permanent adhesive but a temporary bond. We are living in a universe where the most fundamental property of matter, its mass, is contingent upon the continued stability of an invisible ocean that has no reason to remain still forever. The architecture of the stars and the delicate chemistry of life are both subjects of this silent, pervasive power, waiting to see if the texture of space will remain constant, or if the ocean will one day decide to sink into the true basement of the void. In the summer of 2012, deep beneath the pastoral landscape of the border between France and Switzerland, the most complex machine ever conceived by human hands reached a state of feverish readiness. The Large Hadron Collider, a ring of superconducting magnets spanning 27 kilometers in circumference, lay buried 100 meters underground, a cathedral of cold steel and silicon dedicated to the interrogation of the void. Within its circular vacuum pipes, two beams of protons were accelerated in opposite directions, guided by magnetic fields so powerful they required temperatures colder than the depths of interstellar space. These particles were pushed to 99.9999991% of the speed of light, circulating the ring 11,000 times per second, gathering the kinetic energy of a speeding freight train into a space smaller than a needle's point. On the 4th of July, 2012, the command was given to bring these beams into a head-on collision. Within the heart of massive detectors, each the size of a 5-story building, space tore asunder. The protons smashed into one another with a violence that recreated the conditions of the universe a mere fraction of a billionth of a second after the Big Bang. For a vanishingly brief moment, the intense heat melted the boundaries of matter, allowing the fundamental fields of nature to reveal their true faces. Out of this microscopic inferno, a ripple emerged, a fleeting, ghost-like signature recorded by billions of sensors. It was the Higgs boson, the long-sought physical manifestation of the field that grants weight to the world. the discovery was met with a roar of triumph that echoed through the global scientific community. But as the initial celebration faded, a more somber realization began to take hold. The triumph lay not just in finding the particle, but in measuring its mass. After months of painstaking data analysis, the number was refined. The Higgs boson weighed approximately 125 gigaelectronvolts. To the uninitiated, this was merely a data point in a ledger of subatomic properties. To the theoretical physicists who had spent decades modelling the architecture of reality, this specific value was a shockwave. It was the Goldilocks number for a cosmic catastrophe. The stability of the entire universe is dictated by the relationship between the mass of the Higgs boson and the mass of the top quark. If the Higgs had been significantly lighter, the vacuum would be inherently stable, a solid and unmoving foundation that could endure for eternity. If it had been significantly heavier, the universe as we know it could never have formed in the first place, as the vacuum would have collapsed under its own weight in the first moments of creation. Instead, the measurement of 125 giga-electronvolts placed our universe in a narrow, precarious corridor known as metastability. The data from the Large Hadron Collider provided the first hard evidence that we're not standing on a solid floor of existence. Instead, the universe is balanced on a ledge. This measurement suggests that the Higgs field is not in its lowest possible energy state, but is trapped in a temporary equilibrium. Like a boulder that has rolled down a mountain only to be caught by a small outcropping of rock halfway down, the field is stable for the moment, but it is not at rest. The measurement of 125 gigaelectronvolts revealed that the ridge holding that boulder in place is finite, and that a deeper, more profound valley of energy exists further down the slope. This realization turned the triumph of discovery into a profound philosophical burden. The very experiment designed to confirm the foundations of our reality had instead revealed that those foundations are temporary. The shockwave through the physics community was not one of fear, but of a cold mathematical clarity. We had finally seen the face of the Creator, and it was the face of an architect who had built a house upon a shifting sand dune. The precision of the measurement meant that the calculations of Sidney Coleman and Frank DeLucia were no longer mere theoretical curiosities. They were a description of our actual condition. The tunnels beneath Switzerland had acted as a time machine, allowing us to see the fundamental parameters that were set in the first moments of the dawn of time. By measuring the Higgs boson, we had effectively measured the tension in the spring of the universe. The value of 125 gigaelectronvolts tells us that the spring is coiled tight, held back by a barrier that is strong enough to have lasted 13.8 billion years, but which is not infinite. We are living in the afterglow of a measurement that confirmed our existence is a lucky accident of timing, a long-duration pause in a process of cosmic settling that has not yet reached its conclusion. The ledge is real, the height is dizzying, and for the first time in history, we have a number that quantifies the fragility of everything we have ever known. This number, born from the debris of 1 million proton collisions, serves as a silent warning that the stillness of our world is a mask worn by a vacuum that is, at its heart, profoundly unsettled. The universe is not a flat plane. It is a rugged terrain of potential. Every field, every force, and every particle seeks the path of least resistance, striving to reach the lowest possible energy state. This journey is the driving force of all change, from the cooling of a star to the decay of an atom. In this vast topographical map of existence, our current reality is a sphere resting in a shallow basin, high upon the slopes of an immense and shadow-shrouded mountain. This basin is a local minimum, a place where the ground dips just enough to catch the ball and hold it still. To an observer within this basin, the world seems level. The horizon appears distant and secure, and the laws of physics seem as immutable as the granite of the mountain itself. This is the deceptive nature of metastability. A system is metastable when it is stable against small disturbances, but vulnerable to a large enough change or a specific quantum event that could push it over the edge. We exist in a state of precarious equilibrium, a long-term pause in a much larger descent. For 13.8 billion years, the ball has remained in its shallow cradle. It has survived the birth of galaxies, the collision of black holes, and the rise of consciousness. From our perspective, this duration is an eternity, a proof of permanence. But to the mountain, 13 billion years is a mere heartbeat. The ball is not at the bottom. It is merely waiting. The energy that could be released by falling to the true basement of the mountain is still there, coiled like a spring, hidden behind the thin ridge of the basin's rim. The basin we inhabit is the false vacuum. It is a state of nothingness that still contains a residual background energy, the energy of the Higgs field. Beneath us, at the very base of the mountain, lies the true vacuum. This is the absolute ground state of the cosmos, the place where energy is at its absolute minimum and the fields of the universe are at their most relaxed. The transition from the false to the true is not a simple change of scenery. It is a fundamental reconfiguration of what it means to exist. The ridge that separates us from this true vacuum is an energy barrier, a wall of potential that has, thus far, been too high for the ball to roll over. But in the strange logic of the subatomic world, a ball does not always need to roll over a ridge to find the other side. The tension of this positioning is the defining characteristic of our age. We are held in place by a barrier that is incredibly thin when measured against the scales of the infinite. Every atom in every living being, every sun in every galaxy, and every memory ever recorded by a thinking mind is a passenger on this ball. We are all balanced on the ledge, kept from the abyss by a mathematical fluke of the Higgs field's mass. If that barrier were to fail, the descent would be absolute. The ball would not just roll, it would accelerate into the true vacuum, shedding the excess energy of our current reality in a catastrophic wave of transformation. The architecture of the universe, the delicate dance of gravity and light, is only possible because we are stuck on this specific ledge. There is a profound irony in the fact that the complexity of life requires this state of instability. The true vacuum at the bottom of the mountain is a place of such low energy that the complex structures of our world, the heavy elements, the intricate chemistry of deoxyribonucleic acid, the vast networks of neural pathways, could likely not exist. We require the tension of the ledge to provide the energy necessary for matter to have substance and for light to have warmth. We are the inhabitants of the high slope, living in the thin air of a metastable state because the basement is too cold and too simple to support us. Our entire history is a story written on the side of a cliff, a narrative that continues only as long as the ball remains in its shallow dip. The mountain does not care if the ball falls. It is an indifferent monument to the laws of energy. It is only we, the passengers on the ball, who feel the weight of the height and the terrifying beauty of the ledge. The barrier that protects us is not a physical wall, but a mathematical one. It is composed of the very constants of nature that we use to describe our world. For trillions of years, this barrier has held firm against the pressure of the true vacuum below. Yet, the mountain is vast and the quantum world is restless. The ledge is not a permanent home, but a temporary sanctuary, a brief moment of stillness in a universe that is still trying to find its way to the bottom. We look out at the stars and see a finished cosmos, but we're actually looking at a work in progress, a system that has paused on its way to the end of the line. The stability we take for granted is the result of a cosmic standoff between the energy we possess and the lower energy we are destined to reach. In this high-altitude existence, every second is a triumph of probability over the inevitable pull of the abyss. The laws that govern the movement of planets and the fall of an apple are powerless in the kingdom of the infinitesimal. In the realm of the very small, the solid certainties of the macroscopic world dissolve into a haze of probability. Here, a particle is not a discrete point, but a smear of existence, a wave function that describes where it might be found at any given moment. In this flickering, ghostly landscape, the concept of a barrier is fundamentally different from a brick wall or a mountain ridge. A barrier is merely a region where the probability of finding a particle is extremely low, but never zero. This is the birthplace of quantum tunneling, a phenomenon where the impossible is merely a matter of waiting for the right roll of the cosmic dice. In our everyday experience, If a ball is trapped in a valley, it must be given enough energy to roll over the surrounding hills to escape. Without that energy, it is a prisoner of its geography. But in the quantum world, the ball is also a wave. Part of that wave exists within the valley, but a tiny infinitesimal portion of it extends through the hill and into the world beyond. There is a non-zero chance that the particle will simply vanish from inside the valley and reappear on the other side, having crossed the forbidden region without ever having travelled the space in between. It does not climb the hill. It bypasses it through a shortcut in the fabric of reality. It is a ghost walking through a wall, a feat of statistical defiance that occurs billions of times every second within the core of the sun and within the very microchips that power our digital world. When we apply this logic to the entire universe, the implications become chilling. The energy barrier of the Higgs field, which keeps us perched on our metastable ledge, is subject to the same rules of probability. For 13.8 billion years, every point in the vacuum of space has been testing that barrier. Every cubic millimetre of the void is a site where a quantum fluctuation could, in theory, tunnel through the ridge and into the lower energy state of the true vacuum. The barrier is high, and the probability of a single point tunnelling is so low that it defies human comprehension, yet the universe is vast beyond measure, and the clock of eternity never stops ticking. In the infinite theatre of the cosmos, the highly improbable is a mathematical certainty given a long enough timeline. The end of everything does not require a grand celestial alignment or the collision of galaxies. It requires only a single lonely event. Somewhere in the cold, lightless expanse between the great attractor and the distant filaments of the cosmic web, a single point of the Higgs field fluctuates. It is a random, senseless twitch of the vacuum. In this one location, the energy does not climb the ridge of the ledge. It tunnels through it. The ball vanishes from our shallow basin and reappears in the true vacuum below. This is the nucleation of a bubble of the new reality. It is a spark in the dark, a microscopic rupture that signifies the transition from the world we know to a world that our physics cannot describe. This single point of true vacuum is a state of lower energy, and like a drop of water in a supercooled liquid, it serves as a seed for a total phase transition. The space surrounding this point is suddenly under immense pressure to follow suit. The vacuum is no longer in equilibrium. The collapse of this one point creates a tension that pulls on the adjacent regions of space, encouraging them to tunnel as well. What began as a subatomic anomaly becomes a macroscopic frontier. The bubble begins to grow, fueled by the vast amount of energy released, as the false vacuum decays into the true one. This released energy is what drives the expansion of the bubble's wall, pushing it outward with a relentless, unstoppable momentum. There is no way to predict where or when this spark will occur. It is not triggered by heat or pressure or the movement of matter. It is a fundamental property of the vacuum itself, a ticking clock built into the geometry of space. We are surrounded by a potential for erasure that is entirely indifferent to our presence. The very air we breathe and the stars we chart are all susceptible to this sudden quantum leap. The stability of the last several billion years provides no guarantee for the next second. We are living in a house where every brick is a quantum system, and any one of those bricks could, at any moment, decide to tunnel into a different state of being. The spark of the true vacuum is the ultimate wildcard in the deck of the cosmos, a silent, invisible threat that turns the entire universe into a ticking time bomb of probability. This spark does not merely change the point of origin, it creates a boundary, a wall of fire and new physics that begins to race across the cosmos. The moment the first point tunnels, the countdown for the rest of existence begins. The bubble is born of a single quantum fluke, but its growth is governed by the absolute laws of causality. It is a sphere of nothingness that is more stable than the somethingness we inhabit, and it possesses a hunger to expand that can only be satisfied by the total consumption of the false vacuum. The stage is no longer being set, the play has ended, and the curtain is beginning to fall at the fastest speed allowed by the universe. The nucleation of the true vacuum is not a slow or ponderous event. it is an instantaneous revolution of the physical order. From the single point where the quantum tunneling occurred, a sphere of new reality begins to grow. This is the true vacuum bubble, a region of space where the Higgs field has finally reached its lowest energy state. The energy released by this transition, the latent heat of the vacuum, is poured into the expansion of the bubble's wall. This boundary is a thin, shimmering frontier of absolute transformation, and it does not merely move, it accelerates with a terrifying mathematical inevitability until it reaches the cosmic speed limit. It races outward at 300,000 kilometers per second, the speed of a light. Because the bubble moves at the same velocity as the very photons that carry information across the cosmos, it is a predator that gives no warning. In the conventional world, we see a threat before it arrives because light reaches our eyes faster than the object itself. But here, the destruction and the news of the destruction are one and the same. If the bubble were to originate a few light years away, the first indication of its existence would be the moment it passed through our bodies. There is no telescope that can see it coming, no sensor that can detect the shift in energy before the wall arrives, and no radio signal that can outrun the wall of the new vacuum. One moment, the universe is a familiar tapestry of stars and planets. The next, the tapestry itself is unmade. The wall of the bubble is a frontier of total erasure. It is not a wall of fire or a wave of pressure in the traditional sense, for those are phenomena that occur within the rules of our current physics. Instead, the wall is a site where the rules themselves are being rewritten. As the boundary sweeps through a solar system, it encounters the sun, a vast, roiling sphere of plasma held together by the balance of gravity and nuclear fusion. The moment the wall of the true vacuum touches the outer layers of the star, the physics allowing fusion to occur simply evaporates. The sun does not explode in a supernova, it is dismantled. The protons and neutrons that have endured for billions of years are no longer governed by the same strong and weak nuclear forces. The very concept of a nucleus becomes a ghost of a previous era. The sun is not destroyed by an external force, it is unmade from within, its matter dissolving into a new and unrecognizable form of energy that the new vacuum dictates. As the bubble continues its relentless march, it encounters a planet like the Earth. On the surface, life continues in its final microsecond of ignorance. A child looks at the sky, a bird takes flight, the oceans churn with the rhythm of the moon. Then, the wall arrives. It passes through the atmosphere, the crust, and the core in a fraction of a heartbeat. The transition is instantaneous. The electromagnetic force, which governs the bonding of atoms into molecules, is altered. The chemical bonds that hold together the double helix of deoxyribonucleic acid, the minerals in the rocks, and the water in the sea are severed. This is not a death by heat or cold, but a fundamental dissolution. The atoms themselves are not crushed, they are simply no longer atoms. The constituent particles, the electrons, the quarks, find themselves in a medium where their mass and charge have changed. The structure of the world is not broken, the possibility of structure is removed. This is the ultimate efficiency of the false vacuum decay. It is a cosmic reset that requires no effort beyond the initial spark. The energy released by the falling vacuum fuels the further expansion of the bubble, ensuring that the frontier never slows and never falters. It moves through the galaxy, consuming thousands of star systems every year, leaving behind a wake of true vacuum where the light of the old universe can no longer shine. The stars that once illuminated the night sky are extinguished one by one, not because they have run out of fuel, but because the space they occupied has changed its mind about how matter should behave. The expansion of the bubble is the final act of a universe that has found a more stable way to be. Behind the wall, the cosmos is a blank slate. The complex structures of the past, the galaxies, the nebulae, the intricate webs of dark matter, are swept away like dust before a broom. The new vacuum is a state of profound simplicity, a lower energy configuration that does not support the complexity required for life, or even for the existence of the heavy elements forged in the hearts of stars. we are witnessing the total reclamation of space by a more fundamental version of itself. The bubble is a sphere of silence, expanding into the noise of our world and replacing it with an absolute, unmoving calm. It is the end of history, travelling at the speed of light, an invisible and unstoppable frontier that proves the ledge we stood upon was never meant to be a permanent home. The universe is not being destroyed, it is being replaced, and in that replacement there is no room for the ghosts of the old world to linger. The wake of the bubble is not a void of nothingness, but a plenum of a different kind, a reality where the very fabric of existence is woven with an alien thread. The transition does not leave behind rubble or debris, for the change is too fundamental to permit the survival of macroscopic relics. Instead, it is a realm where the constants of nature, the numbers that once dictated the strength of a magnet or the pull of a star, have been discarded and replaced by a new, colder set of laws. The Higgs field has settled into its true minimum, and in doing so it has recalibrated the scales of reality. The particles that once formed the basis of our world now possess masses that are entirely incompatible with the architecture of the past. Electrons, which once danced in delicate, predictable shells around atomic nuclei, find themselves transformed. In this new vacuum, they may be so heavy that they instantly spiral inward to be consumed by the centre, or so ethereal that the electromagnetic pull can no longer hold them in orbit. The four fundamental pillars of the old universe, gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces, no longer stand in their familiar positions. In this new era, the hierarchy of power is unrecognisable. The strong nuclear force, which acted as the iron grip holding the hearts of atoms together, is shifted in its intensity. If this force weakens even slightly, the electrical repulsion between positively charged protons becomes an insurmountable wall. The periodic table of elements, the grand ledger of all possible matter, is instantly reduced to a single, impossible line. There are no carbons to form the backbone of complex molecules, no oxygens to fuel the fires of metabolism, and no ions to sit at the molten core of a planet. The universe becomes a vast, uniform sea of simplistic particles, unable to congregate into anything as sophisticated as an atom. Electromagnetism, the force that allows for light, and the intricate dance of chemistry, is similarly transformed. If the strength of this force shifts, the very nature of a light is altered at a structural level. In our world, the photon is weightless, a property that allows it to travel across the breadth of the cosmos to bring us the story of distant suns. But inside the bubble of the true vacuum, the photon itself might acquire a mass. A heavy photon would be a sluggish thing, unable to travel more than a few meters before being absorbed by the vacuum itself or decaying into other particles. The universe would be a place of absolute local isolation, where no star could ever be seen from any other point in space. This is not a darkness caused by the absence of light, but a fundamental inability for information to move through the void. The dark is a structural property of the new physics. The stars themselves, those great engines of complexity and light, find no purchase in this new reality. A star is a delicate balance, a standoff between the inward pull of gravity and the outward pressure of nuclear fusion. In the true vacuum, the parameters that allow for fusion are gone. The temperatures and pressures required to force nuclei together are no longer sufficient because the nuclear forces have changed their tune. The suns of the old universe do not just go out, they are rendered physically impossible. The energy that once radiated from their cores is replaced by a cold, dark equilibrium. The universe remains physically present. It is not a hollow void, but it is a sterile, crystalline graveyard of potential. It is a machine that has reached its final, most efficient state, and in that efficiency, it has no need for the waste of heat, light, or life. Complexity requires a specific kind of friction in the laws of physics, a way for things to stick together, to build, and to evolve over time. The true vacuum is too smooth, too perfectly stable for such things. It is a state of maximum equilibrium, which is ironically the absolute enemy of life. Life is a process that thrives on the flow of energy from high states to low states, a struggle against the inevitable slide into entropy. In the true vacuum, the universe has already reached the bottom. There is no more room for the gradients of energy that drive the movement of a single-celled organism or the firing of a human neuron. Consciousness, the most complex arrangement of matter known to the cosmos, is a physical impossibility here. The new universe is a silent, unmoving monument to simplicity, operating on a logic that has no requirement for observers to witness it. The building blocks of life are replaced by strange new configurations of energy that do not support the existence of DNA, or the proteins of the mind. Perhaps instead of atoms, the universe is filled with glue balls, dense clumps of force-carrying particles that have no need for the quarks of our world. Or perhaps the vacuum is filled with a dense superfluid of Higgs particles that makes the movement of anything else a laboured, impossible task. It is a world of matter that is not merely invisible, but fundamentally disconnected from the possibility of interaction. This is the ultimate alien landscape, a place where the very concept of a landscape is a relic of a defunct physics. It is a universe that is physically real but spiritually and biologically empty, a finished work that has erased the very tools that could have been used to understand it. In this state of true vacuum, the cosmos has finally found its rest, but it is the rest of a stone in a lightless deep, forever beyond the reach of the warmth and the wonder that once defined the era of the ledge. The passage of time is the only lens through which the fragility of the vacuum can be truly measured, yet the scales involved are so vast they threaten to dissolve the very concept of a human epoch. We look back across the history of our cosmos and see a sequence of events stretching across 13.8 billion years. To the minds that have evolved within this span, such a duration feels like an eternity, a monumental progression from the first blinding flash of the dawn to the cooling, structured complexity of the modern night. We have lived through the birth of the first generation of stars, the slow enrichment of the galactic medium with the heavy elements of life, and the long, quiet cooling of the cosmic microwave background. In our eyes, the universe is an ancient, venerable structure that has proven its stability through the sheer weight of its years. However, when this age is placed against the mathematical projections of the false vacuum's lifetime, the 13.8 billion years of our history shrink into a mere fraction of a second. The calculations derived from the mass of the Higgs boson and the top quark suggest that the expected duration of our metastable state is not measured in billions of years, but in trillions upon trillions. Some models push this number even further, into the realm of decillions or even 10 to the power of 100 years, a span of time so immense that the current age of the universe is but a vanishingly small point at the very beginning of the line. From this perspective, the universe is not an old man approaching his end. It is an infant who has barely taken its first breath, standing at the start of a marathon that could last for an almost inconceivable duration. This discrepancy creates a profound and unsettling tension. If the average lifetime of the vacuum is so long, one might feel a sense of security, a belief that the ledge is effectively permanent for all practical purposes. But this is where the deceptive nature of quantum probability reveals its teeth. Quantum mechanics does not operate on a schedule. It does not follow the predictable linear progression of a clock. The tunneling event that would ignite the true vacuum bubble is a stochastic process, a random roll of the cosmic dice that occurs at every point in space and every moment in time. While the statistical average suggests a lifetime of trillions of years, the event itself is not bound by this average. It is a possibility that exists in this very microsecond, and in the one that follows, and in every second that has passed since the beginning. The universe is a clock with no hands. It possesses the mechanism for its own end, but it offers no dial to indicate how much time has passed or how much remains. There is no build-up to the climax, no gradual weakening of the energy barrier that we can monitor with our instruments. The probability of the vacuum decaying is the same today as it was 5 billion years ago, and it will remain the same 5 billion years from now. We are living in a state of permanent now, where the past 13.8 billion years of stability provide no statistical protection against the next moment. The fact that the glass has not cracked yet does not mean the glass is getting stronger. It simply means that, thus far, the random fluctuations of the void have not landed on the one specific configuration required to breach the wall. This realization shifts our understanding of the present, the now of human existence, the brief window of time in which we have built our telescopes, written our poems and mapped the genome, is not a guaranteed era of safety. It is a tiny, flickering candle flame held up against a vast and howling expanse of potential dissolution. We exist in a pocket of history that is defined not by its permanence, but by its persistence in the face of an ever-present alternative. Every second that the universe remains in its false state is a victory of chance, a momentary reprieve granted by the laws of probability. We are the beneficiaries of a long-running streak of good luck that has lasted for 13.8 billion years, but the game is played anew with every pulse of the vacuum. The staggering scales of time involved in the cosmic gamble mean that we are likely living at the very dawn of a story that could continue for an eternity, or end before the next sentence is finished. There is no middle ground, no warning bell, and no way to negotiate with the statistics of the subatomic world. We are observers of a reality that is functionally eternal on one hand and instantly perishable on the other. This duality is the hallmark of the metastable universe. We navigate a world of solid objects and enduring laws, all while floating on a sea of energy that is mathematically destined to sink, eventually, to a lower level. The vastness of the projected lifetime only serves to highlight the exquisite rarity of the current moment. We are the children of the first few seconds of a very long day, yet we must live with the knowledge that the sun could be extinguished not by the slow exhaustion of its fuel, but by a sudden change in the nature of light itself. In this vast expanse of time, our existence is a brilliant, fragile spark, a temporary defiance of the dark that defines the true basement of the cosmos. The universe is an engine of staggering complexity, yet it possesses no heart. It operates on a set of cold, mathematical parameters that are entirely blind to the aspirations, the suffering, or the survival of the biological flickers that inhabit it. We have long sought to see the cosmos as a sanctuary, a home meticulously crafted to support the delicate chemistry of life, but the reality revealed by the metastability of the vacuum is far more indifferent. The laws of physics do not act as guardians. They are merely the current settings of a machine that has no awareness of its own output. Gravity does not pull because it wishes to anchor us to the Earth. The electromagnetic force does not bind atoms because it values the structure of a human cell. These are simply the consequences of energy seeking its level, and if that level should shift, the machine will continue to hum with the same mindless precision, even as it grinds the totality of human history into nothingness. The realization that our existence is contingent upon a temporary energy state strips away the comforting myth of cosmic purpose. Every empire that has risen and fallen, every masterpiece of art that has moved a soul to tears, and every hard-won discovery of science is written upon a surface that the universe can wipe clean without a moment's hesitation. We are like a civilization that has built its most grand cathedrals upon the surface of a frozen lake, unaware that the ice is not a permanent floor, but a transient phase of matter. When the heat of a quantum fluctuation finally reaches the critical point, the ice does not merely crack, it ceases to be ice. The cathedrals do not sink into the water to be preserved as ruins for some future explorer. They are unmade at the molecular level, their very substance converted into the new, simpler logic of the true vacuum. This is the ultimate erasure. In the traditional visions of the end of the world, whether by fire, ice, or the slow heat death of the stars, there is usually a lingering memory, a physical remnant that testifies to what once was. A scorched planet, a frozen monument, or a stray radio signal might endure to tell the story of a vanished people. But the decay of the false vacuum offers no such legacy. The history of humanity is a chalkboard that the universe is destined to scrub bare. Every memory of a first kiss, every record of a bloody revolution, and every dream of a future among the stars is nothing more than a specific arrangement of particles and fields. When the bubble of the true vacuum passes through the brain of a poet, or the archives of a great library, those arrangements are not just destroyed, they're rendered impossible. The new laws of physics do not have the vocabulary to describe a human thought or the chemical bonds of a book. The silence that follows the passage of the bubble is a silence of a different order. It is not the quiet of a deserted city or the stillness of a graveyard, for those silences still contain the echoes of the life they once held. This is an absolute structural silence. It is a universe where there is no one left to remember that humanity ever looked at the stars, no one to recall the names of the gods we invented or the equations we used to map the dark. The void does not mourn the loss of consciousness. It does not feel the absence of the billions of lives that were extinguished in the fraction of a second it took for the vacuum to settle. The cosmos continues its expansion, its new fields vibrating with a lower, more stable energy, utterly unburdened by the memory of the 13.8 billion years that preceded the collapse. This mathematical indifference is the most difficult truth for the human mind to absorb. We're a species that finds meaning in narrative, in the idea that our lives are part of a continuing story. The false vacuum reveals that the story is not being written in ink, but in smoke. The universe is a vast automated process that has, by a fluke of probability, produced a window of stability long enough for us to emerge and wonder about our origin. But the window is not a promise. It is a statistical anomaly in a much larger and darker game of energy. The engine of the cosmos does not require our survival to function, and it will not pause to acknowledge our disappearance. When the final transition occurs, the erasure will be so complete that the very concept of humanity will vanish from the physical record of reality. There will be no ghosts to haunt the true vacuum, for there will be no medium left to hold a ghost. The light of our sun, the radio waves carrying our music into the deep, and the very atoms of our bodies will be subsumed into a new sterile equilibrium. We are a brief, beautiful accident of physics, living in the pause between the beginning of the experiment and the inevitable reset. The indifference of the cosmos is not a cruelty. It is simply the nature of a machine that is too large and too simple to care. We are the only ones who can assign value to our time on the ledge, for we are the only ones who know that the ledge is there. In the face of this absolute erasure, the fact that we have existed at all, and that we have dared to look into the abyss and name it, becomes the only meaning we can ever truly claim. The silence that awaits us is inevitable, but the noise we have made in the meantime is our only true defiance against the cold, unblinking eyes of the mathematical void. The realization of our fragility does not have to be a source of despair. It can be the foundation of a profound and quiet beauty. If the universe is indeed a temporary state, then every second of the last 13.8 billion years has not been a mere sequence of events, but a miraculous and sustained defiance of the void. We inhabit a golden window of stability, a long and luminous afternoon in the life of the cosmos where the conditions for complexity and consciousness have been allowed to flourish. This sanctuary in the dark is a precious gift, a reprieve granted by the laws of physics that allows for the existence of everything we hold dear. The very fact that the vacuum has remained false for so long is a testament to the incredible resilience of our reality, a stubborn persistence that has permitted the dust of stars to wake up and wonder at its own origin. In this light, the meta-stability of the universe shifts from a looming threat to a source of exquisite value. We often prize the eternal and the unchanging, believing that permanence is the hallmark of significance. But the most beautiful things in our experience are those that are transient. The bloom of a flower, the colours of a sunset, the brief spark of a human life. The universe itself follows this same poetic logic. It is a masterpiece that exists only for a season. Its beauty is heightened by its vulnerability, by the knowledge that the ledge upon which we stand is not a permanent fixture of the infinite. This realization transforms our perspective from one of existential fear to one of deep and abiding gratitude. We are the beneficiaries of a cosmic accident that has lasted for eons, a temporary state of grace that has provided the stage for every story ever told. The human race occupies a unique and privileged position in this narrative. We are the rare eyes that have been allowed to look upon the ledge before the fall. In the vast, unthinking engine of the cosmos, we represent a moment of self-reflection. Through our telescopes and our equations, the universe has developed a way to perceive its own nature, to understand its own laws, and to recognize its own transience. Consciousness is not an intruder in the physical world. It is the highest privilege of the material realm, the point at which the vacuum becomes aware of its own potential to change. To be the ones who notice the microscopic crack in the glass is a burden, but it is also a supreme honor. We are the universe's way of knowing that it is temporary, the witnesses who can testify to the splendor of the false vacuum before the curtain eventually falls. This perspective imbues our daily lives with a new sense of urgency and wonder. Every breath is a victory over the probability of dissolution. Every moment of connection between two thinking minds is a triumph over the cold indifference of the mathematical void. We are living in a sanctuary that was never guaranteed, a pocket of order carved out of a chaotic and hungry dark. This makes the work of being human, the pursuit of knowledge, the creation of art, the practice of kindness, infinitely more meaningful. We are not just passive observers of a dying world. We are the active participants in a glorious long-duration miracle. The fragility of our world is what makes it sacred. We exist in the interval, the beautiful pause between the first spark of creation and the final settling of the fields. This interval has been long enough for galaxies to form, for planets to cool, and for life to evolve the capacity to love and to learn. If the end of the story is an absolute silence, then the noise we make now is all the more precious. We are the music that the universe is playing in the brief moment before the instruments are put away. This realization allows us to stand on the ledge not with trembling knees, but with heads held high, looking out at the stars with the gratitude of those who know they are seeing something that was never supposed to last forever. The story of the false vacuum is ultimately a story about the value of the present. It teaches us that the ground beneath our feet is a gift, and the air in our lungs is a loan from the void. By accepting our place in this temporary architecture, we find a peace that the quest for permanence could never provide. We are the children of a golden age, the inhabitants of a stable bubble in an unstable sea. Our role is to be the memory of this state, to be the ones who appreciated the light while it lasted. In the grand tapestry of time, we are a single, shimmering thread, but that thread is woven with the colours of 1 billion suns and the dreams of 1 trillion souls. We are the universe knowing itself, and even if that knowledge is destined to be unmade, the fact that it occurred at all is a victory that the true vacuum can never take away. We are the watchers on the ledge, and the view from here is nothing short of magnificent. The path from a microscopic crack in the glass to the vast sweeping architecture of the cosmos reveals a reality that is far more dynamic and dangerous than our ancestors ever dared to suspect. We have travelled from the silent, deceptive stillness of our local environment into the high-energy heart of the subatomic world, where the very foundations of existence were weighed and found to be wanting. The discovery of the Higgs boson, with its specific mass of approximately 125 gigaelectronvolts, was the moment the map of the universe was redrawn. It was the moment we realised that the ground beneath our feet is not the solid bedrock of eternity, but a temporary ledge in a much larger and more terrifying landscape of energy. This journey has shown us that the vacuum of space is not an empty stage, but a saturated medium, a coiled spring of potential that has the power to unmake everything we have ever known in a single, silent heartbeat. We live in a universe defined not by its permanence, but by its potential for total transformation. The laws of physics, which we once believed were the eternal decrees of a clockwork cosmos, are now understood to be the temporary rules of a specific energy state. They are the local conditions of the ledge. If the ball should fall, if the vacuum should decay, those laws will be discarded like the blueprints of a failed experiment. This potential for change is the fundamental truth of our age. It connects the smallest quantum fluctuation to the largest galactic cluster, weaving a story of instability that spans 13.8 billion years of history and trillions of years of future possibility. The universe is not a finished monument. It is a phase transition in progress, a system that is still seeking its final, lowest energy state. This realization brings us back to the value of the present moment. In a world that is fundamentally temporary, the now becomes the most precious resource in the cosmos. Every second that the stars continue to shine, every hour that the chemical bonds of our bodies hold firm, and every year that the Earth remains a habitable sanctuary is a triumph of probability. We are living in a golden age of stability that was never promised and cannot be guaranteed. This fragility does not diminish the importance of our lives, it amplifies it. The fact that our empires, our arts, and our memories could be erased by a single quantum event makes the act of creating them all the more courageous. We are the architects of a world built on shifting sands, yet we continue to build, to dream, and to seek understanding. This is the ultimate defiance of the void. As we look out at the deep dark of the night sky, we are no longer seeing a static backdrop. We are seeing a dynamic field of energy, a vast ocean that is held in check by a delicate balance of forces. We are the rare observers who have been granted a seat at the table of existence during its most interesting and complex chapter. To understand the false vacuum is to understand the true nature of our home. It is a beautiful, fragile, and temporary gift. We are the consciousness of the cosmos, the eyes that have noticed the crack in the glass and the minds that have measured the height of the fall. This knowledge is a burden, but it is also the highest privilege, for it allows us to appreciate the brilliance of the light precisely because we know the darkness that awaits. The story of the universe is far from over, and the mysteries that remain are as vast as the vacuum itself. Each discovery brings us closer to understanding the true nature of the reality we inhabit, and each measurement provides a new piece of the cosmic puzzle. The journey of exploration is the only way to honour the brief window of time we have been given. It is a quest that requires both the precision of mathematics and the courage of the human spirit, a pursuit that unites all of us in a shared effort to witness the grand narrative of the stars. To continue this journey and to stand with us on the edge of discovery, we invite you to join our community. By subscribing to the channel, you ensure that you are part of the ongoing exploration into the deepest reaches of space and time. Together, we will continue to witness the unfolding story of our cosmos, from the smallest particles to the largest structures in existence. Do not miss the next chapter of this epic narrative. Subscribe now and remain a watcher on the ledge as we seek to uncover the secrets of the universe, one discovery at a time. The glass may be fragile, but the desire to understand is relentless, and the story of the universe is one that belongs to us all.